This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, that's good. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Obviously, this is the second session that we've run. For any new faces, anybody who didn't join the last one, my name's Anthony Bennett. I'm the manager at Zync Digital. We're a digital marketing agency exclusively working with credit unions and social enterprises. And I'm also joined by our fantastic team. So I'll hand over to Jack just to say a brief intro.
Hi everyone, I'm Jack. I'm the paid social account manager at Zync. So I look after things like Facebook ads, Google ads, as well as sort of doing a little bit on email marketing, blogs and that kind of thing.
And also Pooja.
Hi, I'm Pooja. I'm the social media manager here at Zync. So I'm kind of responsible for sort of creating the content that you see online on our socials and also just community management side of things as well.
Brilliant. So yeah, as I say, thanks for joining us today. I thought obviously you're all pretty much comfortable with Zoom, but just by way of due diligence, if anybody has any questions whatsoever as we're going through, please pop them into the chat. We'll be picking them up obviously as we go along. There'll be lots of chances for kind of interaction as it was with the previous webinar. And again, we'll be tweeting along today. So if you do have kind of Twitter, if you are active on social media, please do get involved with us. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know anything you might find interesting. Yeah, and we'll be picking those up. As I say, I'm joined by Jack and Pooja today. So if you have any difficult questions, please do ask them and not me. But yeah, I think we'll get started then. So just kind of by way of a bit of a recap. So the first session, which was on the 13th of July, was a bit of a kind of an introduction into kind of digital marketing, the things we do for our clients, and hopefully kind of it gave you at least some best practices, some tips that you can go and then action. This session today is much more kind of practical. So, we're going to be looking in a little bit more detail at two areas that we decided, and that was based on the feedback that we found in that first session. So the first part is going to be kind of a how-to session, looking at kind of creating content for your credit union. I'm going to take that first session with Pooja, and that'll take us up to about 11 o'clock. We'll have a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back, hand over to Jack. Jack's going to look at setting up a paid social media campaign, specifically with the aim of increasing membership and loans for your credit union. And then the third element, so this is going to be from next Monday onwards. So after the session today, you're going to be sent a survey, as you were after the first session, and that's also going to contain a link to a platform called Calendly. And Calendly lets you kind of book kind of a one-to-one 2-hour session with our whole team, and it'll be completely tailored to your needs. I should say that is only available to the English credit unions amongst us. But if you do have any kind of requirement, if you would like to explore it, by all means, get in touch with us. Our contact details will be shared and everything, and we can see, we'd love to kind of set up a call regardless, even if you are outside of England. So that's it. I mean, any questions so far, or is everyone okay? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
There's just a comment from Jazz to get slides from both presentations. I mean, after this, we're going to be sharing the recording link for both, and also the slides and everything after today's session. So don't worry about that at all. Okay. So for today's session, I mean, the first part of it, at least the first hour, we're going to quickly recap what we talked about in the first webinar. Then, as I say, myself and Pooja are going to have a look at kind of creating online content for your credit union. We're going to come back. Jack's going to run us through a paid social media campaign. And then towards the end, there'll be kind of a final recap of what we've discussed today and a Q&A for any in-depth questions and stuff like that. Okay. So to kind of start where we kind of left off last time, so to speak. So we basically talked about the different areas that typically is involved in a digital marketing strategy. And the first most obvious one was social media. Now, 70% of the UK has an active social media presence. So it goes without saying, it's very important for your kind of organization to be represented on there. It's where people go, it's where they use, it's where they communicate. So yeah, I mean, obviously it makes sense to be on there. We basically concluded that, you know, organic social media as such, it's not a tool used for selling, or at least it shouldn't solely be. It's more kind of building an engaged audience and communicating your values, your ethics, and your identity, essentially why you're different to the other alternatives out there, like banks, payday lenders, and so on. We always kind of tell our clients it's very much about creating content that provides value, as opposed to just kind of selling, you know, your loans or your savings product. Whilst it's always kind of important to inform them of the full range that are available, it's much more effective if you can kind of create something that is, you know, authentic and real, provide them with some value as well. Okay, so your audience for organic social media tends to be current members or current stakeholders. So, you know, things like directors, volunteers, obviously current members, potential current payroll partners and things like that, but also with a view to attracting new stakeholders. Okay. And then again, we talked about these 4 letters. So if your social media content isn't at least one of those things, we'd always advise against posting. And the reason being is that social media platforms have an algorithm that essentially scores your content. If it scores well, it'll mean that it's shown to more people the next time. And if it scores badly, it means it'll be shown to less people. So you should always be aware of that. Okay. And again, we basically concluded that the 4 most popular channels for kind of credit unions is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we're going to be looking at those in a little bit more detail shortly. Okay, so paid social, this is something that we took a bit of an in-depth look at, is essentially using the social platforms to advertise to specific kind of segments. So say, for example, if you wanted to get your message out in front of a particular demographic, that's what paid social essentially is. For us, in our experience, it's the most cost-effective method of generating new members and new loans. And we're going to be looking at that in the second half. And again, it's really kind of sophisticated. I mean, even, you know, anecdotally, you know, people talk about, say if they're talking about something or with the friends or whatever, and it seems as though there's an advert pop up on the social media. I mean, I know that's happened to me. But there's so many different kind of sophisticated targeting factors, things like location, occupation, interests, demographics, all these types of things. Again, always make sure you research first. Start small, you know, don't feel as though you have to kind of go in with a huge budget. Anything's kind of scalable. So if you try something with a couple of £100, you find it works or it needs to kind of be changed, that's always the approach that we'd recommend. Okay. We also took a look at paid search, which is essentially using search engines like Google to serve ads. So we did an activity last time whereby we asked everybody to Google cheap loan on Google or the phone, and to tell us what the first results were. And those first results, based on the keywords that we used and based on the kind of demographics of each individual, served individual ads. And that, in essence, is paid search. Okay. Paid search tends to result in a higher conversion rate or a higher kind of action rate because people are actively searching for your product. So if somebody's searching for a loan in London or a loan in Liverpool, it's much more likely they're going to take action upon it. Okay. It tends to be more expensive, but that's because you're going up against kind of organizations with bigger budgets. Say, like, I mean, we looked at the examples last time. It was like Money Supermarket, Tesco Mobile, Experian, things like that. But what we can do is we don't have to go head to head with them. We can kind of carve out our own niche. And that's where kind of the value is. There's 4 different types, so search, display, app, and video. And then again, it's all about continuous monitoring and tweaking, as with anything in digital marketing, really. We also took a look at email marketing. So that's essentially communicating with your current member base to make sure that they're engaged, that they keep coming back to you, and that they feel as though they're treated as an individual which I think credit unions do really well. And it's a really powerful tool, and it's relatively cost effective as well. I mean, just to start there, email is still very much how we all communicate. Again, we talk about kind of segmentation with email marketing. So the more personalized you can go with it, the more effective it's likely to be. I would never recommend sending 2 or 3 emails to an individual every month. I mean, by all means, you can split up your audience and send 10 different emails to 10 different people, and it'll be really effective, but I wouldn't kind of bombard people above, say, the 3 a month mark, essentially. Then again, obviously GDPR is such a big thing. So anybody you do kind of communicate with via email, specifically for a marketing purpose, has to be GDPR compliant. So you need their permission to do so. Blogs we had a look at. So basically it's this idea of kind of thought leadership and building trust within your organization. If you're, say for example, if a member of your team creates a blog and it's really worthwhile and people see it, it reflects well on the credit union and vice versa. It also is a really effective method, say on LinkedIn. If you are trying to attract new volunteers or new directors, a blog's a really good way of kind of communicating your values and your ethics. Just some typical sites where it's typically found. Again, don't kind of write War and Peace. It just needs to be kind of enough to get your message across. Okay, and then websites we took a brief look at. It might be one if, say for example, any of you guys really think that you'd like to have an in-depth look at your website. That's something that I'd recommend maybe for the consultancy sessions. It's such a broad, wide area that it would take, you know, a couple of hours, I think, to discuss in depth. But it's always important to have a fully functioning website. Make sure that your common bonds represented pretty much obviously on there, so people know exactly who can join and who can't. It gives you the most control over how you're perceived. I mean, a lot of these kind of channels and disciplines that we talk about, they're all kind of reliant on a platform, but with a website, you pretty much have a lot of control in a lot of circumstances anyway. It's always important to make sure that for new members and for current members, it's really streamlined, really easy to use. We talk about this idea of UX or user experience, and that's essentially what that is. Okay, it needs to be secure, particularly with it being financial. People need to be assured that, you know, it's safe, particularly for new people. It needs to be safe, functional, straightforward. And then finally, the last thing that we looked at was reporting. Now, digital marketing will always have this advantage over traditional advertising. You know, you think back years ago, taking out an advert on TV or the radio or, you know, the side of a bus, it might be really effective, but you're never going to really know. Digital marketing is different. It's quite unique in that regard because you can track where every penny and every click and every impression goes. It's always essential. I mean, something that we do every single month for every one of our clients is deliver them a digital marketing report. It allows us to see what went well, what went wrong, where we need to improve. And then again, always make sure to try and track what actions are being taken on your kind of member application page. Okay. And then again, there's tools like Google Analytics, which are free, which are really in depth and really kind of useful for learning where to improve. Okay, so that's a bit of a recap from last session. Is there any questions just before we get stuck in? Or are we all okay? Anything in the chat, guys? Are we all okay? I'll take that as we're all okay. Cool. Superb. Okay. So what we're going to look at basically is this is a bit of an in-depth how-to on how we would go about creating content for our clients' pages. And when we say that, we're talking about organic. So literally creating a post and fire it out on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Then I forgot that. So the first step is always to consider who your audience is. And that pretty much will tell you which channel you should post on, essentially. So, you know, who do you want to communicate with? Is it going to be someone of a particular age. Say, for example, if you have, I don't know, let's say higher interest bearing savings accounts, and you think that that might be more suited to an older demographic, you might be more kind of swayed towards posting on Facebook. Or say, for example, you know, I don't know, we're coming into, let's say, festival season or anything like that, and you think that might be more for a younger demographic, you might be swayed to go towards Instagram. Things like gender, say, for example, if you run child benefit loans or anything like that, that might come into your consideration. Location, obviously, some of our credit unions kind of joining today will be community based. So, you know, they have a common bond, which is geographical. Others might be, you know, employer credit unions, and that should always come into your kind of your thinking. Occupation, obviously, for employer credit unions. Say, for example, you want to get a message out to NHS workers or Royal Mail workers. It might be an idea to think about that before you post them. And then again, interests. That also kind of comes into which channel you should choose at all times. Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to kind of talk through each one. I'll just kind of gloss over them, if you like, because I think we've talked about this already. But the main 4 channels is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Generally speaking, Facebook is best for kind of video content. It's where your members tend to be. Stuff like competitions, general news. It's still the most popular social media site in the world, and it's got very, very effective advertising tools. Twitter, on the other hand, is more for kind of regular successive updates. So say, for example, things like live events, trending topics, kind of quick fire news. That's what it's best suited for. LinkedIn is more the professional network. So people, you know, find jobs on there, you know, share kind of blogs, things like that. And then Instagram is a solely kind of visual platform. So anything to do with kind of high quality images and video and things like that. Okay. Again, just some stats for us. So just to kind of give you an idea of kind of user base, I mean, this probably should be refreshed, but in terms of just user size, Facebook is by far and away the largest. Almost half of the world's population is active on Facebook. Twitter is a lot lower, but that should be kind of counteracted by the fact that I think it's about 90% of users are in the UK and the US only. LinkedIn is quite high as well, so pretty much nearly 1 billion. Tends to be an older age group with kind of a, you know, it's split right down the middle between genders. For Instagram, it's much more weighted. Well, not much more, but it's more weighted towards female users of a younger demographic, and there's about 1 billion users.
Meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So just to kind of put this in action, guys, just to get a bit of engagement going. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to use the chat and to just tell me which channel you believe each of those items or these posts will be most relevant for. So say if we had the top one, which is a 500 to 700 word blog talking about the recent successes and plans for the credit union in the upcoming year. Say, for example, it's recapping an AGM or a conference or something like that. Which of the 4 channels that we've talked about, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, which one do you think it would be best suited for, considering things like audience and the channel and all that kind of thing? Okay, so straight sweep. Good stuff. LinkedIn is correct. Spot on. And then the second one, so we say, for example, we're going to, I know it was Waku a few weeks ago. We're going to Waku and we want to live tweet it. We want to cover the things that we've been to, the speeches, the sessions, the workshop, the breakouts, etc. Which channel is going to be best suited for that? Is it going to be Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn? Spot on. Correct again. And then the third one, So we're going to publish high quality images and video of a new branch or a new location for the credit union. Where's that going to be? Is it going to be Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter? Superb. Good stuff. That's right. People know the stuff. We're doing something right. And then the final one. So it's a competition asking users to submit reviews to generate engagement and awareness. So say, for example, you want to ask your members to enter into a competition. Where would that be suited to? Spot on. Full sweep. Full marks for everybody. Facebook is right. Okay. So we've talked about channels. Now we know which channel we're going to post on, but now we want to kind of think, which idea do we want to talk about on social media? So I'm going to hand over to Pooja, who's brilliant at doing this. Pooja, take it away.
Perfect. So I think overall, when you're thinking about ideas for posts, it's important to sort of consider these 4 key pillars. So is the post idea sort of aiming to educate, entertain, inspire, or inform? So if you think back to when you're scrolling through your own personal social media accounts, you'll find that posts that tend to sell you things constantly probably aren't capturing your attention as much as posts that are like funny or teaching you something new. So when it comes to the educational side of things, you could include useful articles related to personal finance or money saving, or even state credit union like benefits compared to various alternatives. So the main thing when you're thinking about this side of the content pillar is what you're posting going to provide some educational value to your audience. Now, when it comes to sort of entertaining side of things, you can get a little bit more creative. Open-ended questions, polls, or quizzes are always a really great way of encouraging engagement or interaction from those that follow you. They don't always have to be related to finance. We've done some sort of fun, silly ones where it's like guess the station or guess the celebrity, and it kind of relates to the common bond of the credit union. So it does tend to do quite great. Now, from sort of an inspiring point of view, there's a whole range of ideas. So things like member testimonials or reviews showing the impact that your credit unions have so even promoting things like your milestones and achievements, anything that your credit union has sort of accomplished. It's a great way of showing why someone should join your credit union. And then lastly, we've got informing. So social media is a really great tool for informing your members of key things taking place in your credit union. For example, if it's like a bank holiday and you're going to be shut, you can always sort of let your members know this by sort of posting on social media. Or if you have an AGM that's coming up and you're attending a conference, posting this and notifying your members, it's great. And you can also include some behind the scenes stuff as well, which is always great. I also wanted to add, I think with awareness days, it's amazing because you can always filter them into the various different content pillars. Certain things like there's like Pineapple Day, obviously that's not something that's quite serious, but you can always, touch on it and make it kind of a funny one. But you also have more serious ones, things like Mental Health Awareness Week, where you want to show that your credit union is being inclusive of that and sort of a more serious post related to that. But there's a whole bunch of ideas, and the great thing is you can be as creative as possible, but always look towards these 4 content pillars to see if it's capturing one of those 4.
Brilliant. Thanks, Purge. So now we've kind of discussed, ideas, so we know what we're going to talk about. The next bit is a really key thing that we try and nail down is copywriting. So we need to know, again, these 4 content pillars that we keep referring back to, but we always want to know what our objective is, and that will then tell us how we communicate that. So it's always important to be authentic. Always try and write from a position that you would feel as in the same manner that you would talk to a member if it was in person or over the phone. Is it friendly? Is it professional? Is it, imagine if your credit union was a person, what would that person be like, essentially? Would it be, kind of approachable? Would it be professional? You will know each of these things. So it's always important to speak from a place that is authentic and real, essentially. On social media, try and be short. It doesn't need to be kind of reams and paragraphs. Always try and get your point across sooner rather than later. If you think about kind of typical attention span on social media, I think it's about 8 seconds. It's really, really short. So you need to grab attention quickly in the first line if you can. And then again, think about things like, relevant and timely things. So say, for example, the cost of living crisis at the moment. It's such a kind of a key thing for credit union. I'm sure you guys your members are all seeing it every day. And then again, use evidence to back up whatever you're talking about. Say, for example, if you're talking about, why should you save at the credit union? Then include some stats, maybe include some kind of evidence of last year's dividend or how much savings have increased. Really evidence and shout about your kind of successes as a credit union. Okay. So what we've got here now, anybody who's attended one of our webinars might have seen this before, but it's a bit of an activity, right? So what we've got is we've got 3 social media posts and we've blanked out any reference to the brand. Okay. So looking at the first one on the left, let me know if you can't see it, but I will read it out. I just want you to put in the chat, have a guess at what brand it might be. And all we're doing is just looking at the language. Okay. So it is a cappuccino's bag welcomes spring in an edgy new tone-on-tone model. See more of the latest designs at. Now, have a guess at the brand, but I want you to more think about which audience is this post trying to speak to? Is it high-end, kind of, high fashion, kind of, top of the range, essentially? Is it kind of low end, kind of mass marketing, or is it somewhere in the middle? So just use the chat, feel free to have a guess at a brand for us. Please do be brave. There's no wrong answers. Gucci. Okay. High end. Can't be Primani. So what's making you think that is what we want to try and get to. Just using the language, what tells you that it's high end? Language, spot on. Doesn't focus on the price, but the quality. Edgy, on trend, exactly. So it's almost disruptive in the way that it's talking. Okay. So it was Louis Vuitton. I think we had the correct answer somewhere, didn't it?
We did.
Well done, John. Spot on. And Michael, superb. So basically what we've done is just by looking at the language and the imagery, the audience is, and this is what we want to try and kind of engender for our credit union clients. So again, in the middle, comfy yet coordinated, winner, tick, hoodie £8, €10, $10, joggers the same, £12, €16, $18. Have a guess at which brand that would be. If you don't know the brand, then think about at least the audience where it's placed. Is it low end, high end, somewhere in the middle? H&M, Boohoo, Sport Direct, ASOS, Primark, M&M. And what makes, so there's a focus on price, exactly. It's also, as well, there's some alliteration in there. It's very short, comfy yet coordinated, winner. It's quite light-hearted. I think it's aimed towards more kind of youth as opposed to high-end sophistication and things like that. So that one is Primark. I think we had a few right answers in there. Certainly did.
Mm-hmm.
And then over on the right, same again. So this is back to arm adventure seekers with more options for warmth and weatherproofing this season. The 2020 ACG Winter Apparel Collection. Now, again, who is it trying to speak to? What kind of segment of the audience are we trying to? And have a guess at the brand as well, if you can. North Face. What makes you think that? Active, spot on. Practical, outdoors. There's a lot of verbs in there, isn't it? It's like arm, adventure seekers. Again, alliteration to make it really catchy and kind of get the point across in a succinct way. Okay, but North Face, outdoors, bespoke, Peter Storm, that kind of thing is absolutely right. It's actually nice. Okay, so yeah, we're certainly getting there. Now the next one, okay, this is food. Okay, and I want you to have a think about, so even this one, there's no image here, but I want you to think about the tone, the style of the copywriting, and have a guess at the brand, but also the audience as well. So this one on the left, the first part says, getting hair a ring is tired, boring, and practical, but getting hair onion rings is inspired, purposeful, and in good taste. What do we think about that one? Pub food, fast food, McDonald's, aimed at men, yeah, correct. Got Walker's, M&S, Burger King, Just Eat, BK. Again, spot on. Burger King, it's humorous, absolutely right, Michael. It's humorous, loosely formatted, it's quite informal. Okay, so absolutely spot on. Now the next one in the middle, slow roast rump served with beef dripping, roast potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, carrots, greens, roasted shallots and garlic, and lashings of bone marrow and onion gravy. Your Sunday plans are sorted. Now don't worry too much about trying to guess the brand, but at least what kind of audiences are speaking to and how have they done it? So this is in the middle. Quality, sophisticated, absolutely right. So we've got a lot of people saying M&S. Older couples, yeah, correct. Quality food. There's a real emphasis on the length of the sentence, if you can see that. So it's, really descriptive, lots of adjectives. I mean, it's, it makes you hungry reading it, essentially. So that's how they've kind of communicated that quality aspect of it. And it was Hawksmoor. Don't worry too much. I mean, it's not the most known brand, but what we're trying to illustrate is how they're getting their message across to their intended audience. Now, we had a few people say M&S for this next one. Sorry, for that previous one. This one is, did you know coffee is always 100% fair trade from our stores to our cafes? We only use 100% specialty grade Arabica beans in our fair trade roast and ground coffee for a rich and smooth flavor. Hashtag, this isn't just any brew, this is our brew, and there's nothing quite like it. So there's a giveaway in there somewhere. M&S, spot on. And essentially, these have all used different tactics, okay? So the first one's humorous, it's speaking to a younger audience. The second one's really long and descriptive. And then the third one is kind of trademark. So, hashtag this isn't just, that tends to be M&S's kind of tagline. And that's how, you can really see how each of these brands is carving out its own identity using copywriting alone. Okay. And then final one. So these are cars. Okay. And cars are really a good exercise to use for this, because it tends to be really kind of clear cut in terms of the audience it has. So looking at the left, and I've even blanked out the image for this, okay? So using just the copy, over on the left, we've got focused and ready to take the lead. The X was made to dominate. So what audience is that speaking to? Is it high end, middle end, lower end? What are we thinking? If you think of a car, high end, sports car, competitive language, exactly, tends to be male oriented, I think it's fair to say. If you were to have a guess at which brand it would be, who are we thinking? BMW, competitive male, Audi. It's all about domination. It's kind of, you know, top of the food chain almost. So it was Ferrari. So pretty much top of the food chain, dominates everybody else, faster than everybody else, better than everybody else. Okay. So the next one, and again, it says, hello, Friday. Have we told you we love you? It doesn't say anything about the car. What kind of audience are we thinking might be receptive to that? Younger, cheaper, Fiat. So it's more kind of light-hearted, small, punchy, exactly. So I think we had a couple of right guesses in there. It's Fiat 500. So younger first cars tend to be more female audience as well. Brilliant. Okay. And then on the right-hand side, we've got rated with a 5-star NCAP safety rating. You can drive with peace of mind. Find out more here. What do you think? So if you think about demographics, who's it going to be? What kind of audience is it going to be? Families, mid-range. Correct. Do you have a few guesses for Volvo? Anybody else? Renault? Okay. So it's Honda, you know, kind of quite clearly speaking to families who have safety in mind when picking the cars. Now, I know that's a little bit of fun that we've just run through, but what it's really trying to illustrate is how powerful and how instrumental just copywriting can do. It can really speak to your audience, which says a lot about your product and your identity as a brand. Okay. So thanks for getting involved in that, guys. What we're gonna look at next is best practices with regards images and video. Okay. So it's just some kind of tips to bear in mind. Always use one subject, you know, one thing in mind that you want to kind of get across. If you look at those images we've just seen, then there's only one product or one thing being kind of conveyed in each message. Don't make it too blurred. You know, have one single mind when you're creating images. Keep it simple. Always, if you are kind of taking photos yourself on your phone, I mean, many phone cameras now are brilliant, but always use natural light. It's always best. Avoid lots of text. So try and, if you're kind of putting a social media image out, make sure there's no more than, as a benchmark, 20% of the image taken up by text at any one time. If you want to emphasize something, contrast colors. So make sure that your text is on a background that makes it really stand out, if there are any. And then again, use consistent brand colors and styles. I mean, something all you guys will have and will know is which kind of color and style and tone that your credit union tends to have. And then again, size appropriately for channels. We had earlier on in the presentation an ideal image size for each channel. Again, you'll be able to see that when we send the slides over for you as well. And then again, there's lots of free tools out there. Something that we use every day is Canva. I know it offers kind of premium upgrades and things, but if you are on a budget and you are just kind of starting out with these things, I'd recommend having a look at Canva to create images for social media. Okay, so just to illustrate those points, what we have here is a social media image, and straight away there's a lot of text on there. I'll be amazed if anybody would want to read all of that, essentially. So basically talks about Zync Digital. It's a bit of a mission statement, if you like, about what we do and who we do it for. But that is much clearer, much more effective and get the message across a lot clearer. You know, you think about, again, this idea of attention span on social media. You want to tell people exactly what it is that you do sooner rather than later, or you will lose them and they'll scroll past. Okay. Next one. So sizing. This is taken from our Instagram. This is a screenshot from a couple of years ago. As you can see, there's 3 or 4 of those that are sized incorrectly. It doesn't look great, particularly when you're scrolling on the grid, as opposed to the next slide, which are all sized appropriately. Pooja features quite a lot in this one. But as I say, it's much clearer, much kind of, it just looks more professional, essentially. Again, this is what it looks like for kind of reference on the right-hand side. Single objective we talked about. So say on this one, we want to talk about, 4 of the areas that we've discussed over these webinars. Social media, paid social, email, and reporting. Whereas if we literally have it just for organic social media, people take that message and it's not mixed amongst other things. It's one single mind approach, essentially. Again, we talked about kind of branding, colors and consistency, things like that. So on the right, it's kind of colored in an orange kind of hue. It's very much not our brand colors. Hopefully you've been able to pick up on our colors. Tend to be black and white and a little bit of blue as well. Okay, so we talked about free tools, and these are essentially some of the tools that we use all the time when creating content. So I mentioned Canva. It's very much something I'd recommend. Instagram has a range of free tools as well. So you might have come across a boomerang, which is essentially a repeat and loop. There's also things like layout, which allows you to put collages together, hyperlapse, which allows you to kind of fast forward the recording over, say, the course of a day. Say it's a really kind of cool thing you can use. Other things here that I'm not going to spend too much time on, but that we can certainly discuss in the consultancy sessions, or if you have any thoughts on them, please do let us know. Okay, so we've talked about kind of guidelines and branding. Something that we'd recommend every credit union does, and something that we've put together for a few of our clients, is an idea of a kind of a codified branding guidelines document. And that essentially sets out how your credit union is to be represented online, whether it be on your website, on social media, over email. Say if partners are to promote you, it's a really useful tool to send to them and say, look, this is our tone, this is our style, these are the colors that are to be used. Okay, so it helps you define exactly how you'd like to be perceived. It's a how-to guide that can cover everything from your values, your mission, your objectives, which are obviously so important for credit unions. Also things like tone of voice. So for example, Zync Digital, we want to be perceived as kind of innovative, as kind of, groundbreaking, but also ethical as well. And that's something that we try and work at every day. Things like colors, typography, so font, how that kind of comes across, imagery, and also things like logos. Okay, so what this is a screenshot from obviously a really well-known brand, Cadbury's. Obviously the chocolate, instantly you see those colors and you think of Cadbury's. Okay, so things like purpose, vision, mission, things like that. Things like, your objective, your mission statement, what you want to do to change. Things like design principles. So say, for example, we come up with, say if your credit union was a person, let's just do it now just to kind of test it out. But if you were to describe your credit union, if they were a person, which 3 adjectives would you like to use? Obviously, we can see Cadbury's here is authentic, visionary, and human. So if you just pop in the chat, which things would you like your credit union to be perceived as? So we got fair, responsible, accessible. Brilliant. Ethical is a big one that's coming up a lot. Trusted, reliable, important. Small, yeah, that's fair. We don't want to be perceived as, we wouldn't have, as a credit union, we wouldn't have the same language as a national bank, and I think that's important to emphasize as well. Cooperative, really important. Ethical, honest, friendly, and fair. So obviously you guys know that, you know the difference of your credit union, and that should be celebrated. And something like a branding guideline document can really codify that, so that, say for example, as your credit union grows, you've got that to refer to. Everybody's on the same page. Okay. Things like color palettes, always important. I mean, you think of some of the biggest brands in the world and you instantly think of a color. You think of, let's say, Amazon, it tends to be black and gold. I'm struggling now. Santander is red and white. Guys, help me out. We've got
Zara's black.
Oh yeah, NHS is like blue.
NHS is blue. Exactly. These things kind
Post
of.
office is red.
Post office is red. Thanks. Mine went completely blank then. But obviously, the point is that instantly you're getting brand recognition by this kind of this idea of a branding guidelines document, essentially. So that's something I definitely recommend. Typography. So, things like your font, how that's, I mean, you can look here at some of Cadbury's kind of products. So you've got mini eggs. Their font is obviously much more different to, say, Galaxy Caramel, and it tells a different story. Font can be really important. I mean, say, for example, if we were to put this together in, what is it, Comic Sans with all the, and it looks almost kind of unprofessional, it would have a very different impact than the fonts that we've used and chosen today. Okay. Things like photography, that's also things you can use. How should photographs be taken? Should you have, say, for example, if you do an event for members, how should staff appear? Should they be in kind of uniform? How should they kind of look? Should they be smiling? Should they be not? These are just types of things to consider, and especially as you grow as a credit union. These all come into how you're perceived and how your kind of how your brand is kind of put across, right? Things like product photography. And again, do's and don'ts. So say, for example, how should you use your logo? What colors should it be in? Should it stand out? Should it be slanted? Should it have a bold kind of embossed feel? And again, how your typography is used. And again, if you're looking for examples of this, some of the biggest organizations in the world have their brand and style guides available to download for free on this website. Please do check it out. Okay. So we talked about branding, we talked about positioning. You know exactly your channels, what to post, how to post it. Now we come to this idea of social community management. So think of this as basically you've created a great piece of work. Community management now allows you to go and follow up to see the impact of it. Okay, so social media is just that. It's social. The clue's in the name. It very much kind of it's a two-way relationship. So anybody who kind of engages with your content, you should then engage back with them. So you're part of this online two-way community. Okay. It also kind of builds an authentic presence. If, say, for example, if somebody engages with your tweet or your Facebook post or comments, it's good to react to that or to reshare it if it's certainly a positive one. Social media accounts will always reward accounts that are more proactive. So say, for example, if your Twitter account is used often and engages with other accounts, then Twitter will realize that you're an active user and therefore promote your content higher. It's very much a two-way street. And then again, always respond to queries if they're positive or negative. We'll have a look at that in a sec. But become central to kind of conversations within the sector. So say, for example, something that we always do is if there is a big news story coming out in the credit union sector or the social enterprise sector, we want to be talking about that, because what it does is it tells people that we're proactive and we're engaging with what's going on. We've got our finger on the pulse, and your credit union should be exactly the same. So this is a matrix essentially, and you're going to get a copy of this. But it basically tells you the 3 kind of steps that we take if we get a new comment or a new message. Okay, say for example, if it's a public comment and somebody, I don't know, says they're really happy with the service they received, we want to reshare that. We want to thank them for doing so, because it's essentially social proof. It tells people that, you know, real people are kind of benefiting from the credit union. If it's more a query, say for example, they want to ask about their account, obviously you can't do that publicly because of GDPR, privacy, things like that. So you want to move that offline, so maybe private message them. If it's a complaint, again, you want to be never ignore it or delete it, because that will only make the problem worse. You want to kind of acknowledge it, you know, react to the person by the name, and then, as I say, you know, investigate that privately further, so you can take any relevant actions with your manager or your CEO or whoever it might be. And then again, if it's like trolling, say for example, something we've seen a lot with our credit union Facebook accounts at the moment is lots of fake reviews. So it'll be like kind of fake accounts promoting cryptocurrency and all sorts. Trish as well, we also see some people promoting kind of harmful links for people to lend on our kind of client channels. So what we'd always recommend is to, you know, if it doesn't look relevant and it looks potentially harmful, that's the only kind of instance when we'd say, you know, delete it, report it, and block the account in person if necessary. Okay, superb. Just some kind of examples for us, both positive and negative. So this is obviously a positive one. A great service. What we want to do, we want to thank them and create a 2-way conversation. Always make it kind of friendly and conversational. And then again, address the member by name. It makes them feel valued. You're taking the time out to really respond to positive feedback. Like and retweet it. If it's on Twitter, for example, you know, reshare it, let other people see it as well. If this is a kind of a, you know, more of a serious kind of message, always make sure that you're using your own brand tone of voice. Thank the customer for the message always. Give them any relevant information that you can. Say, for example, if it's about, you know, opening times or something like that, you're not kind of, you know, disclosing any private personal information there at all. So you can really kind of, you know, discuss that over social media. But for example, if it is, say, you know, account related and they need to find out something about their account, always signpost them to contact customer service through the usual channels. Okay, social media isn't secure. We would never recommend doing so. Okay, cool. And then again, never, as I say, never discuss personal data. Finally, so, you know, we talked about creating content for our social channels. The key distinction with digital marketing is that you can always report and analyze with what works. That works very much for organic content. If your objective is to reach as many people, then you want to measure kind of impressions, which types of posts generates the most impressions. If it's engagement, if you want to spark a conversation, the same will apply. Try different styles to see what works. Always use kind of, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn all have analytics to tell you these things like impressions, how many people have seen it, how many people have clicked, how many people have engaged, etc. Again, just a kind of a breakdown of this. So impressions equals single views. So say, for example, if me, Jack, and Pooja see a post 3 times each, that's 9 impressions, but it'll only be 3 people reached. Engagement tends to refer to likes, comments, and shares, and clicks as well sometimes. But an engagement percentage is the proportion of engagements to impressions. Okay, a good engagement rate tends to be between 2 and 3%. That's pretty much industry average. Okay, and then just a bit by way of a checklist. Always consider your audience, your objective, and your channel before posting. Make sure it's one of those 4, either the 2 E's and the 2 I's. ensure you're only using high quality images or video with a single subject. And then again, once you've done it, make sure you go back and actively community manage. So respond to any comments, messages, complaints, etc. And then finally, always analyze and report to see what works best. Okay, so at that note, I think I'm going to pause and we're going to say we'll come back at 5 past. And then Jack's going to run us through setting up a paid social media campaign. Okay, so as I say, guys, grab a tea, grab a coffee, and we'll see you back at 5 past. That's okay. Lovely. don't know, let's give it a minute and then we'll kick off again.
Yeah, sure. Can you see that okay?
All good? Again, guys, for anybody who's with us, please do let us know any questions. We'll be picking them up as we go along, and there'll also be a chance at the end. I'm conscious this is a more in-depth session. So if you do have any kind of technical questions and you think it's best to talk to us one-on-one about it, please do send us an email or whatever you think, and we'll be happy to pick it up. Okay. Jack, when you ready?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm just going to talk us through a paid social campaign strategy. So I'll start us off. So what we'll be going through is just sort of recapping paid social. What are our objectives? How are we going to measure the success of the campaign? Who our audience is? What channel we should use? And just a step-by-step guide of kind of setting up a campaign. So paid social is basically sort of any targeted ads using a paid social platform to a kind of specifically designated audience. Pretty simple, really. So objectives, we can have a lot of different objectives for a campaign, but these are sort of the examples, really. So we can be looking at sales or conversions, which is generally for a credit union, what we'd be looking at, sort of getting people to take out a loan. We can look at awareness. We could just be looking to sort of, for example,
I think he's frozen. Just going to make sure he's able to get back.
Sorry about this, guys. I thought my mic was on then. What we'll do, we'll just answer some of the questions. I was trying to get hold of Jack again. So Alan has said, Facebook puts quite severe limits on targeting for ads promoting credit. Kind of restricted geography and demographics. Absolutely right, it is. And it's a problem that we kind of run into quite a lot. Our typical kind of way around it is to be kind of not as on the nose, not as aggressive with regards to what we're promoting. We're promoting membership of a kind of a member-owned cooperative, and as part of that, you can lend if you need to. So you need to be kind of quite clever with your wording. You can kind of request appeals from Facebook as well, because it tends to be kind of an automated system that picks up on things like words like loans and credit and things like that. But if you can be really kind of measured and considered in the language that you're using, they will allow it to kind of pass through, essentially. And similar to Hillary, I mean, again, it's just about being a little bit more kind of measured in your approach, essentially. Okay. We're back. You're on mute now.
Mute.
apologies, everyone.
No worries, mate. Do you want to just dive straight back in?
Yeah. So yeah, just looking at the different objectives for a campaign. I'm not sure where everyone got up to, but things like recruitment for new people joining the business, app installations if we've got an app, if we've maybe had a video made, sort of, it could be sort of testimonials or something like that we'd like to promote to our common bond. That's another thing that we can sort of look to use as our objective. And then we've got clicks and engagements, which are a little bit more sort of general. And I think, you know, for credit unions, we'd be looking to be more specific than using these two as objectives for our campaigns. So how are we going to measure our campaign? So it's really important that we kind of, you know, set out our stall and make sure that we're being clear about the goals that we're sort of setting with the campaign, because if we're sort of wishy-washy about it, if we're not defined in our goals, then it's going to be really hard for us to sort of look at the kind of performance of the campaign, to sort of draw out the learnings from the metrics that we'll essentially get. We can calculate the return on ad spend by dividing the revenue attributed to a campaign by the cost of the campaign. So it's really important that we have a kind of full understanding of, you know, the sort of price that you'd attribute to a new member or to a new loan. I think for most of our campaigns, it's a specific loan product, which that kind of makes things a little bit easier, because we've got an idea, you know, over the course of sort of a 12-month, you know, child benefit loan, for example, what the credit union is going to make on that. So our audience, these are sort of some of the things that we'd look to target our audience by. So things like job title, gender, which device they're using, sort of, you know, their age, location, social following. So maybe sort of they follow sort of pages that are quite similar. Maybe it's money saving expert they like on Facebook or something like that. We can also look to target by things like behaviors, relationship status, language and interests as well. So what channel should we use? I think we've sort of touched on this a little bit. And obviously there are kind of pros and cons to each channel, which we'll discuss on the next slide. But generally we find ourselves using kind of Facebook and Instagram. The targeting and basically creating your ad is all done on the Facebook sort of /Meta ad platform. So you can basically set up your ads and then link your Instagram account, and then you'll be advertising on both platforms. So just to kind of have a little look here at the different sort of pros and cons. So for Facebook, you can reach a wide audience. There's over 2.93 billion monthly active users, and there's a variety of ad formats. Sort of some of the cons, there's a diminishing organic reach. So I think at the moment, you can generally expect your organic posts to reach between 1% and 2% of your audience. So let's say, just for sort of argument's sake, you've got 100 followers on your Facebook page and you put a post out there. It's likely that only 1 or 2 of your followers are going to be seeing this. And there's also kind of constantly changing target and regulations. So you may come back sort of after a few months of not running a campaign on Facebook and find that some of the target and metrics that you used previously, you're unable to use now. Sort of with Instagram, it's really eye-catching, some unique ad formats, and of course it's linked to Meta and Facebook, so it's just a little bit easier to get things set up. One of the cons is that the audience is somewhat limited. I think the sort of majority of people on Instagram are between 18 and 29, but in some cases that can also be, you know, looked at as a positive as well. If we want to reach a younger audience, I think typically for credit unions, our kind of engaged audience is a little bit older, and we do want to be speaking to sort of, you know, the new generation of credit union users, really. It's also hard for text-heavy ads, so you really want to kind of focus your ad around your creative imagery, and you don't want to have too much text on there. Obviously, it's important to have the right amount of copy so that you're communicating what it is that you're offering to people, but you really want to kind of keep that as kind of succinct as possible. So for LinkedIn here, so it's the largest professional network of around 830 million users. It's got lots of different advertising options, so you can target things like what business someone works for, and you know, sort of what level they're at within the business. We find that LinkedIn for our credit union clients is a great place to also sort of, you know, advertise for recruitment, which we spoke about on the objective slide. It can be very expensive. You know, we find that whenever we do use LinkedIn, it's by far the most expensive platform that we use. You wouldn't sort of, you know, for £250 spend, you generate a lot more leads on Facebook. Obviously, if you are going to be using LinkedIn, it's going to be a little bit more targeted. So hopefully the sort of fewer number of leads that you generate are a little bit more specific. And also sort of there's some nuanced targeting restrictions. So that just sort of depends on what you're looking to advertise on LinkedIn. But sometimes that can put up a little bit of a roadblock to your campaign. So Twitter here, it's It's great for building awareness. You know, a lot of people engage, a lot of people kind of reshare and promote things that the kind of content that they're engaged in on Twitter. And there's lots of different advertising options that's sort of within your targeting and placements and things like that. Some of the cons are that it can spend your budget really quickly. This is something that we've found in the past. The campaign seems to be doing well, but you've spent, you know, your budget for 2 weeks in 5 days, or a lot of the budget is kind of gone. It's not very user friendly. So Facebook put like a lot of kind of effort into making sure that their ads platform is sort of ergonomic and easy to navigate as possible. Whereas with Twitter, you know, it's not as easy to kind of dip your foot in. You might feel a little bit overwhelmed when you're sort of, you know, using it. And to that end, it's not particularly user friendly. There's also a low conversion rate on Twitter, so you know, very few people will sort of look to make a purchase that when they've seen something on Twitter. It's much more for kind of, as we sort of mentioned, building awareness, having reshares and things like that. So this is our sort of step-by-step guide. So after sort of looking at the pros and cons, I think we've decided that we'll be using Facebook and Instagram for this campaign. So we sort of decided to make a credit union. Here's some examples that we come up with, you know, kind of sort of credit unions for people working in law, sort of religious credit unions, dental health, you know, some of these examples. But what we decided to go for is London University Credit Union, which you know, sort of created this example ourselves. And I think this is great to kind of communicate the example. So who is our audience? This would probably be a great time, I think, for everyone to sort of think about maybe putting your sort of common bond in the chat. So if you just put your credit union and who, you know, sort of is eligible to join the credit union in the chat now, just as a little exercise. Just give another minute. Oh, they're coming through now. Okay, great. So Basildon, see you live or work in Essex. RMT union members. I suppose sort of, you know, for you guys, Jazz, the target might be a little bit more nuanced than sort of a credit union that's got a geographically defined common bond. So yeah, we've got a few there. You know, the majority of them are kind of, as we said, geographically defined. We've also got RMT, which is sort of focused at employees of RMT, or sorry, union members of RMT. So yeah, these are just kind of, you know, this is the most important aspect when we're thinking about our audience, to make sure we've sort of got our common bond defined, and we kind of go from there, really. So the audience for London University Credit Union are employees of any London University College and current students of any London University College. So which colleges are in London? So we've had a look, and these are some of the colleges that we that basically are in London and people will be eligible to join the credit union from. So there's quite a few here, and we obviously want our sort of creative, our ads to be as specific as possible. If we can make it feel as though, you know, the person that we're advertising to is being sort of spoken directly to, this helps sort of drive engagement and the performance of the campaign. So rather than sort of cast a wide net and go for all of these colleges, for this example, we've just sort of decided to choose a few sort of colleges there for our targeting. So our objective for the campaign is to basically get new members to join the credit union and hopefully take out a loan. So here we go, encourage employees or students who fit within our common bond to join as a new member and or take out a loan. So yeah, we sort of spoke about this. We'll be using Facebook and Instagram as our channels. You know, typically that's just what we find works best, is the best value for money, and also the audiences that we can reach are kind of large enough on there as well. So yeah, there's a large audience, but we've looked to define that. So we'll just be looking at 3 colleges today: Imperial College, Goldsmiths, and Royal Holloway. So the first step is to set up a business manager account. So you go to Business Manager on business.facebook.com/overview, create your account, enter a name for your business, your name and work email address, and click next. Then you enter your business details and click submit, and it's really quite simple to get that set up. Once you sort of have your business manager account set up, go to create ads in your sort of manager account in the Facebook business manager homepage. And this is where essentially we'll sort of create our campaign. So when you click create a campaign, you choose the campaign objective. So there are kind of 2 options that you can use here. We could look for conversions, but we'll use lead generation. That's what we've been using typically for most of our campaigns, and it allows us to use the inbuilt Facebook lead gen forms, which we find really help us, just for making sure we've got all the right data, and also for our cross-referencing with our clients. So once you create a campaign, this is essentially what you'll see. So you've got your campaign here, which is the sort of highlighted option. And then you've got your ad sets. So we've got different ad sets for the different colleges that we're looking to target, because our target will be slightly different for them. Then we've got our ads beneath this. So this is where we'll put things like our creative, our copy, where the actual ad sort of is. So when we're targeting people, this is what you will sort of see when you get to your target, which is within your ad set. So you can target people by location, by age, and then there's also some further kind of targeting, demographics. So you can sort of target people by interests, you can target people by their behaviors, you can also target people by places that they work and things like that. So obviously, sort of for this campaign, we'll be looking to target people by where they work or where they study. So as you sort of click through, basically you can click through here and then you'll get to your employees and you can search for the employees that you're looking to target. Not everyone is on there. So sometimes, if the employer you're looking for isn't listed, or sort of people don't have that employer on their kind of Facebook pages, you might have to be a little bit nuanced about how you target people. Just sort of think around it, think about, sort of maybe targeting very specifically to the area that they'll be in terms of where the actual university is, and just sort of think around it a little bit. So yeah, when you do sort of find the employer that you're looking for, this is what comes up. This is the size of the audience, or the number of people that have listed this as this employer as sort of their employer on Facebook, and basically this kind of determines how many people will be targeting with our ads. So here, this is sort of, rather than an employer, this is sort of people who attend this university. So there's a much larger audience here. And again, sort of same thing for our different audiences for Goldsmith, for Royal Holloway, and for Imperial College. So once we've sort of created our ad sets, we've got some of our targeting sorted. Obviously, for kind of each sort of targeting area that we're looking at, we'll have a different ad set. So you can sort of create as many ad sets as you need, or sort of have as few. We'd say that you don't want to stretch your budget too thin. So let's say we created this campaign with all of the colleges that we were looking to target in the first place, and we only had a relatively small budget of £250 for the month. What we would say is to sort of break that down into kind of maybe targeting 4 colleges at the most, because we don't want to spread our budget too thin, because it really won't be effective if we do this. So there is kind of a sweet spot to be found. So as you're sort of clicking through on your ads, you basically need to put in your campaign budget. So generally, we'll have, if you've got a number of ad sets, we turn campaign budget optimization on. So this basically is Facebook's sort of algorithm that essentially just spreads your budget across the campaign. Now, What this means is that if you have one ad set that performs particularly well, let's just say, for example, it's Royal Holloway, and the students and employees at Royal Holloway really engaged with the campaign, what will happen here is that most of the budget will get pushed there where it's essentially performing best. In some cases, you know, this might not be kind of what is desired for the campaign. So just for an example, one of our clients, First Class Credit Union, they sort of work with communications workers and also postal workers across the UK. Now they get really good engagement from people who work for Royal Mail. We've got quite a sizable sort of portion of their member base are from Royal Mail. So they kind of want us to push the wider common bond a little bit more than we would the Royal Mail one. So in this case, we'd sort of have campaign budget optimization turned off, because what will happen is that we already know that this audience is the most engaged audience. So the budget will be sort of pushed towards that audience. And it kind of can limit us in reaching the people that we want to reach. So it's a pretty nuanced kind of situation whether you're going to use campaign budget optimization or not. But if you've got multiple ad sets, especially if it's a first campaign, we'd recommend using it. So here's your campaign budget. So you can set your budgets to be lifetime or daily. Generally, we use a lifetime budget because that's just sort of, you know, what we find works best for us. We know what we're kind of doing. We've done it before and we know it sort of works. So you put your lifetime budget in here. You can set things like your campaign bid strategy and that sort of thing, but we generally recommend just keeping it at the presets, which is lowest cost. And then comes our media. So within our ads, sort of when you click on these, you'll be able to see this you basically be able to add your creative. So you can add your media here. There's a number of different formats that you can use. So it can be sort of still imagery, animated images, videos. You can also do things like carousels, which are basically a number of images that people can scroll through. So for example, you could maybe have your first image to try and garner people's attention, you know, make them think, oh, what's London University Credit Union sort of about? And then on the further slides, we'll just have more information about what it is that they can apply for. This is a great kind of option if you want to kind of have a lot of information on there and you aren't looking to maybe lead people straight to your website or something like that. You also have your primary text, your headline, and your description. So generally we use these to try and really explain to people what the product offering is, a little bit more about the credit union. You know, we don't want to do this sort of on our imagery, as we spoke about earlier on Anthony's section of the webinar. You don't want to use more than sort of 20% of your image as text. So yeah, just sort of what I mentioned here, you can have images, videos, you can also sort of create a video. Basically, you can upload some assets, your creative assets to Facebook, and the algorithm kind of helps you to build a video. Now, we don't really do this very often, but it could be a good option to explore if you sort of feel like you're struggling a little bit with your creative. So we spoke about ideal sizes sort of earlier. So for Facebook, we'd use sort of 1600 by 900. Instagram is 1080 by 1080. So you can sort of upload multiple creatives if you want, but also with the sort of advertising platform, generally things will be resized to the kind of correct size. So you can still use that for a paid campaign. Whereas if you're uploading on Instagram organically, we'd say to make sure that it's 1080 by 1080. So we use Canva, as we discussed earlier. You know, it's sort of simple, quite easy to use, and it's fast as well, which is important, I think. So when we're sort of creating our imagery for a campaign, there's a few different factors, a few different things that we want to make sure it's sort of there. So obviously we've got our sort of branding, which is London University Credit Union. You know, people need to kind of instantly know what brand is speaking to them, essentially. We've got Imperial College London's logo here. So this will be obviously our advert for people who are sort of studying or working at Imperial College. And we want to try and capture their attention, make them understand that this advert is specifically, you know, for them and geared towards them, so that maybe, you know, they'll sort of stop as they're scrolling and read a little bit more. We'll have a main heading, which again is to kind of capture attention. sort of lead with, you know, what we're doing, what it is, and then we've got a subheading, which is just to qualify things a little bit more and talk about like the benefits essentially of what we're trying to advertise. So this is what we've kind of come up with here. So it's quite simple, just relevant imagery. So obviously, you know, university graduates, we've got our logo there, we've got the Royal Holloway logo there, and then quite simple, do you study at or work for Royal Holloway? If the answer is yes, then hopefully the people looking at the ad are going to be, you know, looking a little bit more. So take hold of your finances today. The idea is, you know, this makes them think, okay, right, how am I going to do this? Sort of, how is London University Credit Union going to help me take hold of my finances? And we've done the same for Goldsmiths, just change things around a little bit. And then again for Imperial. So you can sort of use, you know, slight variations of the copy on your images. You can see which is sort of performing best. Let's just say that we get most of our leads coming through from Imperial for this campaign. Then what we'd look to do is just use that same sort of phrase, start saving for tomorrow, today, on our other sort of creatives for the campaign. So yeah, just sort of what I've discussed, you know, to break it down. So the recognizable logo relevant to the target audience, this is kind of what really, you know, sort of we use to capture that initial attention. Target the customer with a relevant question, sell the product, have some relevant imagery again. So, you know, maybe people are only looking at the sort of left side as they scroll past, but hopefully because the imagery is sort of specific and relevant to the people we're targeting, hopefully that means that they engage with it. And then our logo, of course, as well, because I think, you know, it's really important that we're sort of presenting ourselves as a brand to the people that we're targeting. So here we've got some examples of copy that we'd use for a campaign. So the primary text, study or work at Royal Holloway College, London University Credit Union is your exclusive bank. So sort of quite short, snappy, I think it's to the point. And we've used that kind of language, you know, your exclusive bank. So it makes people feel a little bit special, I suppose. And that we're sort of doing this specifically for them. The headline, access affordable finance and simple savings. Again, it's quite simple, sort of easy to read. And then we've got our description here. And basically what we want is for people to expand our description, to click on the ad and to want to know more. So this is where we kind of have a little bit more in-depth explanation. So London University Credit Union offer the employees and students of London universities the opportunity to access ethical financial products as a non-profit financial organisation. Get in touch today to find out more. And this is what our ads will sort of look like in the wild. So you can see here we've got our sort of headline and we've got, sorry, our primary text and our headline. We try to keep them short so that it's not broken up on the ad. People can sort of read the whole sentence and hopefully, you know, they'll click to kind of learn more. And these are just some placements. So because the sort of, essentially you can choose manually where your ads are going to be placed, but we generally use sort of automatic placements. We allow Facebook's AI to kind of put the ad where it's performing best. But this is just how there's essentially sort of some different views. So on the left here, we've got a Instagram ad, but on the right, this is a display ad. So this could be sort of, you know, somewhere different essentially on someone's Facebook or Instagram pages, rather than just in their feeds. So yeah, here we've got some more sort of examples of the copy. You know, we'll just look to change it to make sure it's specific to whichever segment of our audience that we're targeting. You know, you can sort of look to try different descriptions out. You can add in options as well. Another thing that is useful is, you know, potentially at the start of a campaign, you could maybe have up to 5 options for each. So let's just say that you choose 5 options as the campaign's going on. You can look to see which copy is performing best. You can sort of turn your others off, and this way you can have a better idea that sort of what you're doing is kind of along the right lines and driving the right engagement. So here's just some more examples of those ads kind of in the wild. You know, it's really sort of pretty similar. It's basically the people sort of who are seeing the Imperial ad, basically our Imperial kind of targeting segment. So it's only those people that are going to see this. So, you know, you can just have really subtle changes that just are specific to your audience. And then obviously there's sort of audience definition. So here we've got an audience that's too specific for our ads. So you might want to make it sort of broader. And we've got a fairly broad audience here, but then the sort of goal that we're looking for and that we'd want for all of our campaigns is to have a defined audience. That means that we've defined them in terms of our targeting metrics. You know, there's a large enough segment of people that sort of fall into those targeting metrics and will be receiving the campaign. So as long as our audience is defined, we can have a generally, you know, sort of a little bit of confidence that the campaign is going to perform sort of well. So this is sort of what we'd look at after we've kind of completed a campaign. After the campaign is run, we'd look at the performance metrics. So sort of some things we've discussed here, such as reach and impressions. So reach, the number of individuals that we've reached, impressions, the number of individual post views. We've got our budget, the number of leads we've generated, our cost per lead, which we find is a really, really important sort of metric. You know, as you're sort of managing the campaign as it's ongoing, you want to really keep a close eye on cost per lead. For us, generally, we like to pay sort of, you know, between kind of anywhere from sort of £3 up to sort of £7 or £8 per lead. But it's dependent on the product that's being advertised, dependent on the size of the audience, and also the sort of, you know, industry kind of specific things like cost per lead, also just general account metrics that you can look at. So let's just say, for example, as a campaign is ongoing, the cost per lead is really high. You're paying £12 and sort of per lead. You might have a look at the campaign, you might have a look at the different ads that you've got and find out that, just for example, it's costing you £15 per lead for leads from Goldsmiths University, whereas your Royal Holloway leads are only costing sort of £5. What we'd look to do in that situation is essentially turn off our Goldsmiths ad. This will help us kind of lower our cost per lead, make the campaign a little bit more economical, because we know that the leads coming from our other ad sets are essentially cheaper. So link clicks, how many people have clicked through to the site. Generally with a campaign, we'll be sending people to the join and borrow pages of the credit union. So this is important to know. You know, let's say that we've had 500 people click through, but only, you know, 80 people have completed the loan application. This tells us that there might be something we can do on the website, something we can do to maybe sort of streamline the loan application process, because this is a point that we're kind of losing people. So new accounts. So these are people who've either joined the credit union or taken out a loan. The new account value, which, as we discussed at the start, is sort of really important for us to basically sort of try and define before we start the campaign, because this feeds into our sort of you know, the total value of the new accounts that we've generated, as well as our return on investment calculations. So again, that's sort of the percentage of revenue generated compared to the spend. So net return over budget times 100. So it's quite sort of important really to be looking at these campaign metrics, because this informs how we can sort of move forward. You know, if things have really sort of gone how we want to, then we know the sort of format, the way that the campaign set up is working. Alternatively, you know, sometimes you don't get the results that you're looking for, and it's important that you learn from this as much as you learn from when things are sort of successful as well. So lead capture. So these are the sort of lead gen instant forms that we use for the campaign. So when somebody sort of clicks and wants to find out more or wants to apply for a loan, this is what they'll see. So sort of it's basically just pretty simple. You know, try and be friendly in the copy. So we just sort of use this. We'd love to help complete this form. Go to our join and apply page for your chance to start saving or apply for a loan. So we'll get our sort of information, the contact information here from our clients, from the leads that we generate. And then we'll have a review page where we can make sure everyone sort of checks over what they've put in, everything is right. And then the final page, we just try and make sure that people understand that the process isn't over yet. You still need to actually sort of apply for the loan or the membership. But we find this is really good for our cross-referencing. We can add in different sort of bits of contact information that we'd use here. So obviously things like email and full name, they're the most important sort of bits of data that we'd like to collect from our leads, but we can also put things in like postcode, to make sure that the campaign is reaching people that we want to reach. We can also put in sort of phone number. This might be a sort of good time maybe for people to put in the chat whether your credit union texts sort of your members, or is that something sort of that you do or you don't do? Because we can find that following up with our leads sort of using different ways, things like texts can be a little bit more sort of personal. Maybe some people don't check the email sort of inbox as regularly, but if you've got a text, it kind of can help people feel like they haven't been forgotten about, feel like we're sort of trying to help them every step of the way get through. So
yeah, just before, so I think it's probably around about now where it might be useful. So a couple of questions, Sheila and Melanie, it's quite related. Sheila's asked, does the system or that automatically identify which leads then turn into memberships and loans? And then Melanie's asked, how did you measure how many new accounts actually resulted in approved loans? So I think that's the next step, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'll just go to the next slide. So this is basically just sort of to go through how we essentially measure the performance of the campaign. So generally, as I mentioned sort of earlier, the sort of lead gen forms will link through to our Join and Row pages. We'll transfer the data from our instant forms to a spreadsheet, which is conditionally formatted so that we can easily cross-reference the lead data with loans and new member data. So this is sort of, I think, in answer, I think to Melanie's question. Basically, we'll have this spreadsheet and we'd send it over to, it might be yourself, Melanie. You'd send that over at the end of the week. And what you would need to do is have the email addresses for any new members that have joined the credit union, as well as any new loans that have been taken out. It's good to keep them separate. And all you would need to do is sort of copy and paste those emails into the sort of column. I think there's been a little mix up here. This is the full name column, but it should have email addresses in. So you copy and paste the email addresses in there, and if there's any duplicates, they will be highlighted. In whatever sort of color. It might be green, it might be red, and then you can just put a Y or an N into the sort of application completed column, and basically that will tell us whether sort of someone has completed an application to be a new member or completed a loan application. So that's kind of how we determine whether a loan has successfully been taken out as a result of the campaign. We have to do this because of the sort of secure nature of the credit union websites. And for some kinds of products, it's possible to automate this whole process. But generally, we find that we really struggle with kind of back-end service providers and trying to implement those sort of tracking technologies, the tracking codes and things like that. And also, as things do change in the kind of regulatory framework of social media advertising, that process can become harder. So people sort of rarely use pixels, which is Facebook's kind of tracking code that would allow us to do something like this, or automate this process a little bit more.
I think as well, just to add on to what Jack said, doing it this way allows you to, if you were to do it the automated way and track completed applications, you will still need to do some manual analysis to find out if those loan applications are being approved or declined. So doing it this way allows us to not only see if a loan application has been made, but if it's being approved, accepted, how much, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
When you sort of find out basically, that somebody has maybe completed they've completed our lead gen form, but haven't completed a loan application, we'll kind of look to follow them up. We'll look to follow them up as specifically as possible. So this is just an example of an email that we sort of send to someone who's completed the lead gen form, but haven't started their application or haven't completed their application. So just sort of speak to them, kind of, you know, talk a little bit about ourselves. It's important to kind of make sure that we've got a link to finish the application as early as possible in our communication, but we've also got some kind of qualifying information as well. So it's an opportunity for people who may be a little bit unsure to find out some more about us. You know, we've linked here to a Citizens Advice Bureau article, which talks about credit unions to try and help sort of build a little bit of credibility in maybe the minds of those customers who aren't quite sure yet. And we basically want to try and push them along as much as possible. So cross-referencing allows us to sort of pinpoint the point that leads are at in their journey. So it might be that somebody has sort of, you know, completed a loan application but haven't sent over sort of supporting documents or something like that. So it's better that we communicate with this person and say, you know, you've completed your loan application, you still need to send over X, Y, and Z, you know, bank statements and that kind of thing. And we just find that, you know, really in all of our kind of communications, whether it's just an email campaign or if it's a follow-up for a kind of paid campaign, if we can be as specific as possible when we're talking to our audience, it sort of just drives a better engagement. So yeah, it sort of helps us tailor our kind of content, helps make it as specific as possible. And also, once the campaign has finished, we can also use our sort of the engagement that we've had in our lead gen forms to create lookalike audiences, which we find sort of a really good, it's a really good way to sort of allow Facebook's algorithm to help you target an engaged and kind of primed audience. And this is also an example I mentioned earlier that we can put things like postcodes into the lead gen forms. When we're using like a lookalike audience, we want to sort of use the postcode to cross-reference and make sure that the audience we are reaching is sort of, you know, defined within our common bond and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of, you know, a kind of a quick overview really of how we'd set up, run and report on a paid campaign. Yeah, I think, you know, if there's kind of any questions, I think I'm going to hand over to Anthony now, but obviously I'm still here to answer any specific questions for me. But yeah, thanks everyone for your time, and yeah, hopefully that's of some use to you.
Fantastic, thanks, Jack. So back over to me, guys. We've got some time just for Q&As. Sorry, hold on. So if you do have any questions at all, anything we've talked about either today or previously, please do fire away into the chat. Just while you guys are doing so, just a quick reminder about the third element, sort of consultancy sessions. They're going to be one-to-one, completely tailored to your needs and your credit union's needs. These are just some ideas of a reminder of the things that we can talk about. Okay. But you'll be sent a link with a survey tomorrow to basically review this current session that we've done, and also to book the follow-up. That'll be running from the 1st of August to the end of October with a potential to extend it. I mean, if those months aren't, you know, ideal for you guys, let us know. I'm sure we can fit something in after that point. Okay. Before we do so though, Q&As. So
yeah, I think just very quickly, there's one from Marianne about the lead gen form linking to the application process. So when you set up your lead gen form, you can sort of decide where that's going to link to essentially. So when people sort of complete the form and click, you know, sort of next steps, or I'm not sure exactly what the exact button will say, but you can sort of edit that. It'll take them through. Generally, we sort of have it linking through to the join and apply page, but let's just say that you know, you have a page that is specific to sort of benefits for new members on your website. This is somewhere that you can also link people through to as well. So it is up to you, but generally, you know, we will link to the kind of application pages. So hopefully that answers the question, Marianne.
just one from Mark. Do you have any recommendations or must-dos for SEO optimization? I mean, the first thing I'd say, Mark, is have a look at things like Google My Business or your Google listing. That basically, you know, it's your kind of online profile them as linked publicly on Google. We are also, after this kind of session, sorry, I just forgot to mention this earlier. We're going to be creating a social media handbook that we're going to be emailing out to everybody. You'll all be sent that along with the recording of these sessions, as well as the 2 slide decks. As well, just while we're here, any more questions, guys, please do fire into the chat. But Trish, if you're still with us, I'll let you just run through this.
I am indeed. Yeah, just as a bit of a reminder for all credit unions, as part of our work to promote credit unions and community banks across the sector and deter people from using loan sharks, particularly getting into the savings element, we have got the £25 new member incentives. So if that's something that you're not familiar with, or something that you've heard of but not taken up, please do get in touch with either myself or your local liaison officer. And basically that's just a great way, particularly if you're using social media and you're sort of trying a new campaign for the first time. This could be something that's worth pushing to them. So any new member who joins and starts saving over 3 months, once that member has hit £25 worth of savings, we will put £25 into their credit union account. So it can be a really great prompt, particularly coming up to Christmas, if you start doing it as a bit of a Christmas campaign to start saving for, that sort of thing. It's, can be a really useful tool. But also this year we're doing a bit of a pilot, so we're trying to monitor the longer term journey of those incentives. So out of how many open up an account with the £25 scheme, how many go on to become regular savers, how many go on to take out a loan, that kind of thing. So in order for us to understand that better, we need data, and we are giving each credit union an additional £5 for the data. So that's regardless of whether that member goes on to take out a loan or doesn't, whether they go on to save after the 3 months or don't, we will pay you for that information. So hopefully sort of 6 months from now, we'll be in a really good position to identify exactly what is the impact of those incentives. Thank you, Anthony.
Just another one for you, Trish, while you're here. Maria's asked if the Stop Loan Sharks is only available in England.
Nope. So there is an equivalent of us in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as well. So again, if you want to get in touch with me, I can pass you on the details or make an introduction to sort of my equivalent in those other areas. But yeah, sadly, I know that that's not the subject of today, but it is all coming back to, from our point of view, and the reason that we are funding this work is to encourage people to raise awareness of the fact that loan sharks exist all over the country, and credit union work is a fantastic thing. The more people we can get being aware of credit unions and trying to engage in those relationships, the less chance that individual is going to at some stage need advice from any of the jurisdictions from our work. Thank you, Anthony.
No worries at all. We do have some time, guys, so if anybody has any further questions, please do fire away in the chat. We'll stay on until it's 12.
Just to sort of answer your question, Melanie, what we find is that sort of special ad categories, it's kind of like hit and miss, essentially. So it's AI that determines whether your ad falls sort of within this special ad category or not. So there are some sort of things that we can do that kind of, will try and lead the AI towards not sort of flagging it as special ad categories. So things like maybe not mentioning loans or credit in the actual creative imagery of your ad, but also where special ad categories sort of aren't something that can be avoided, you can create a special ad audience, which that's quite similar to a lookalike audience, but it basically sort of targets people who behave similarly to those who engage with your page, but obviously applies those sort of target and restrictions that the special ad categories implement. So this is what we'd sort of look to do. But also, you know, there's times when we've kind of ran ads that have been flagged for things like discriminatory practices, and we ourselves are unsure of what it is within that ad that has caused this. So there's things that you can do. You can request a review. Obviously, if your ad gets through after you request a review, then things are kind of all good. But you can also sort of talk to Facebook. They've got you know, sort of kind of a support chat that you can speak to people on, and they can help you get the ad sort of put through, particularly when it's, you know, something like discriminatory practices and you've no idea why, you know, that is sort of being flagged. So that's kind of the approach that we'd recommend. I think it's just good to sort of be as flexible as possible when it comes to, you know, these kind of special ad categories and things like that. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
I think that I mean, Mel's just added another one as well there, Jack. Do we take the credit ad button to self-declare it's a credit ad? I think if you're promoting membership to the credit union, you don't necessarily need to, because obviously only part of that element of joining is eligibility to apply for a loan. It's not specifically click this button to apply for a loan. It's click this button to join a credit union. So in that instance, I'd say no, but Jack, you can obviously add to that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in sort of total honesty, Melanie, we wouldn't sort of click that every time we're doing it. In terms of, you know, it sort of makes things a little bit easier for us to just run the campaign as we normally would. You know, generally, unless the ad is sort of specifically, you know, we've got sort of take out a loan for take out a 10 grand loan at whatever sort of APR. Obviously, in that case, you know, we would kind of have to click that, because otherwise, you know, might be breaking the law sort of thing. But if there's kind of, you know, some like reasonable room for kind of, you know, nuanced interpretation of what the ad's about, we wouldn't click that. But obviously, you know, if it's clearly just a loan, as I said, and we're talking about sort of APR, you know, rates and things like that, then yes, you know, we would click.
Well, hopefully he's answered the question before he froze. Are you back with us?
Sorry, yeah,
All good.
I don't know what is going on today. So my apologies, everyone.
No worries at all.
Hopefully
Right, guys.
I'm not
Well-
freezing in unflattering positions.
Okay, well, as I say, guys, we can stay on if there's any other burning questions. If there's anything that you think, or you know, we really want to explore that in more detail, I'm sure there will be. Please do take advantage of those free consultancy sessions for the credit unions in England. If you happen to be outside of England, please do get in touch. I mean, I'm sure we could work something out whereby we set up a call. So I think that's it. I mean, final thing would be to say, follow us on our social media channels. As I say, we're always putting out lots of kind of free tips. We're always talking about things that are going to be interesting to the credit union sector as well as the social enterprise sector. We also have a newsletter on our website, which you'll be able to find. But on that note, I am going to stop recording now. Thanks, everyone.